So, welcome back to the second half of the second class on this topic of reincarnation, rebirth, and the illusion of death. And speaking of titles, this crossways chart, some of the charts I've created, 320 or so of these, only 8 or 10 of them have this long version. So when this gets showed, sometimes the title gets hidden. So someone mentioned that to me at the break, and the title is of this chart that we just completed before we went into this one. Krishna's version as compared to Shankara's version is the binding and liberating nature of the three gunas of Prakriti. So it's good the title is good in several ways. Is that we know that the gunas are, as I was saying at the break, a kind of no-fault philosophy. That this is happening to everyone, like the dark night of the soul and things like that. These things are happening to all beings. That it's just that the mind goes through these cycles when it dips, and so you want to try and keep it from dipping and keep it at a high-minded level, which I would say Dharma or philosophy is really the best thing to utilize for that, if you can take it in and entertain it. So you inform yourself, inform the mind about it. Don't think of it in terms of a foreign religion, think of it in terms of something that's indigenous to your soul, as we say. That these teachings are a part of you, they're inside of you, and you're just forgetting them, sometimes from lifetime to lifetime if you're not careful. And those who come back with this Dharma live these divine lives or dharmic lives all the time, so it pretty much proves itself if you cast your gaze out and about in the field of the three gunas. So in one way that's a nice title. It's both, they can bind or they can liberate. That is, sattva can liberate if it turns into higher sattva, as we were saying. The other part of it's important is the three gunas of what? Of Prakriti. So these are not of your soul. These are of nature. So that's why he says, and I think it's down here. Let me go back to that chart real quick so that we can really put a capper on it. And read that bottom chart, because did we read it? Yes, maybe we did. When the seer sees no other agent than the gunas, he enters into my being. So in another way, in another sloka in the Gita, that's said that all the three gunas belong to nature, not to your Atman. Your Atman is free of those. So identify with the Atman and less with nature, or identify with God and less with mammon. Do the discrimination process. It's necessary to separate these two factions, the real and the unreal, as Vedanta says. And then you realize all of a sudden that it wasn't God that was gracing you, nor was it the devil that was inhibiting you. It was all the work of the three gunas in your mind. This is a liberating philosophy of karma. And when you take karma out of your scripture, like they say happened in the 4th century with Christianity in the Bible in Constantinople, when some unillumined people that we don't even know the names of anymore decided that they wanted to take some of these important sayings of Jesus out. One of those was the teaching about karma, because through karma you can liberate yourself if you know about the karma. If you just let it lie fallow, let's say if you don't know about it, then you don't know what cause and effect is going on. If you do know about it but don't do anything about it, like to neutralize it, then you're just playing with a poisonous snake. It's going to come around, bite you see, inject its poison called suffering and so forth into you. So these are the three gunas of Prakriti, and that's why Krishna brings them out so nicely. It reminds me of some beautiful singing they do about this great archetypical soul, Sri Krishna. Shri Krishna Vishnu Madhu Kata Bhare Bhaktu Anakampam Bhagavan Murare Trayashyamam Keshava Lokanata Govinda Govardhara Madhaveti Mandara Mulevana Nabiramam Bimbadara Purita Venunadam Gogopa Gopi Jana Madhya Samstam Govinda Damodara Madhaveti Om Damodara Damodara Jaya Damodara Om Damodara Damodara Jaya Damodara Damodara. It's one of the verses of this beautiful hymn to Sri Krishna. Damodara is the baby Krishna, like Ramlal is the baby Ram. So these great souls had these infant periods where they were divine beings, and everyone loved them. They saw the special quality in them. It wasn't veiled in the Treta Yuga or the Dwapara Yuga, which were very ancient times when Krishna and Ram lived. Although they have found the battlefield of Kurukshetra now, which is kind of lending some validity to the fact that Sri Krishna was in a body and so forth. Because, I mean, even in some ways it's kind of hard to imagine that Christ was even in a body, and people are doubting it. So when you have these long periods of time, or what Krishna calls in the Gita this long efflux of time, then lots of things get lost, and everything is going outward, evolving, you see, and then people lose sight of the fact that there's an involution that should be taking place in every lifetime. So when you're breathing in, it's sort of like involution. When you're holding, it's like suspension, and when you're breathing out, it's sort of like evolution. Life, birth, life, and death is happening with every breath, and you're the master of those. You're overseeing them, and you might as well equate those to the three gunas. Death is kind of a tamasic state, very hard to go through for anyone, and life isn't all that much easier for many people, and birth is difficult. May you never be born again. It's very painful, Holy Mother said, to be born. So we celebrate birth, you see, in our affluent and happy little great studies of lives that we call societies. And we think, great, let's have more children and let's raise them, but we never think of how to raise them free of suffering, and suffering always comes to them. And that's the whole point of what we call negative teachings in Vedanta. It's not like hell and brimstone kind of teachings, which you should definitely get thee behind me if you're a wise philosopher and a real lover of divine reality. But it's negative teachings that are slaps in the face, that are splashes of cold water on societies and individuals who have fallen into a kind of sleep, around this. And we know there's sleep and there's deep sleep, and we're having a hard time seeing the difference between the two, you see. Deep sleep, we see something deeper, but we don't remember it. We go into it unconsciously. It's like not being conscious of your breath anymore. Are you breathing? Yes. How are you breathing? I'm breathing in. No. What about holding your breath? Oh, I can do that. Watch me go underwater now. See. Well, what about your expelled breath? I don't like that. I have to breathe in again real quick, you see. It's like saying, I like Brahma, Lord Brahma, in the wrong way, because I get to be a baby, full of all my imperfections. And I like Vishnu in a great way because he's keeping my pleasures going, you see, sustaining them. But Shiva I don't like. He's bringing an end to it all, you see. So nobody likes the out-breath, which is the last thing you will have in this life. It's the one thing that you will do in the end. They call that ha, H-A, ha, is your out-breath. Even if you take an in-breath and leave the body, when your consciousness is outside the body, your body relaxes and that air will get expelled. So what about your breathing process, and how important is that to realization, and how familiar is that to the realized soul, and how connected is that to the three gunas? These are all questions of integration, of synthesis, of samanvaya, we call it in Indian teachings, like bringing together all the religions into one realization. So anyway, this song testament to Sri Krishna, it says, "Behold the archetypical soul, the incarnation of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is an eternal form of compassion for all devoted souls, and who annihilates all the many negative forces arrayed against the divinities and all the gunas. He is the Lord of the universe, master of the gunas. May his protection be upon us always." Om Damodara, Damodara, Damodara. Funny, because one of the closest swamis that I had in my life was Swami Damodarananda. And last year sometime, because he was on crutches and hard to get around and so forth, he, like classic Indian monk, one of the 4 ways of leaving a body is to give it to the holy river. So he walked into the river late one night when no one was around and gave his body away to the river. And so I was talking to a few of the swamis, other swamis that I know of the Ramakrishna order, and they said, "Yeah, that's one of the, you throw it off the cliff, drown it in the river." There's 3 or 4 ways in which, classic way in which the monk will give up the body, as if it's of no significance whatsoever. Sometimes in America we get horrified, Tibetan Buddhists came here and then they say, "What do you do with your body if you're a Rinpoche?" "Well, you put it up on Vulture Peak so the vultures can eat it." "Why do you do that? Why don't you burn it or bury it?" As we don't have any regard for it whatsoever. Let it be of help to other beings. Let it be food for vultures or worms. Let fire eat it. That's kind of an easy way out. So, you have this total disregard for the body. Why? Because everyone thinks the body is the Atman. It's completely backwards, 100%. And this is the cause of all suffering, is that we think in terms of physical matter only, and how to keep the body alive, longevity, you see. How to keep it breathing, even if it takes a machine at the end. Your consciousness is already gone, but let's keep the body moving, you see. Keep the lungs pumping, you see. And it's basically out of fear, isn't it? Fear of death, which, according to the father of yoga in India, is the 5th and lowest kind of hell you can fall into. It's the lowest hell, is to be afraid of death, when you yourself are the immortal Atman that knows no death. That here you are, in your mind, falling into some misconception that you die. So, do I need to repeat negative teachings? That these are what you get when you enter into a high-minded philosophical school like Vedanta. I remember Swami Shishananda, one of his talks, actually it was a class he was given in the Katha Upanishad. It's all about Yama, the Lord of Death. So he said, he gave the first couple slokas and explained about death, and then he looked at all the people there, the Westerners, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry for the negative teachings, but this is the way we proceed to get free." And he said, because of these negative teachings, I've got 12 people here right now in this class. I'll have 8 next week, and I'll have 6 after that. And I'll be lucky in a month if I have 2. And he was in his older age at that time, so he'd seen this happen. Straw on fire Americans, Vivekananda called it. They get very interested, but when it comes time to actually understanding the predicaments they've gotten into in Maya, and how to get out of them, and what caused them, like 3 gunas, they're nowhere to be seen. Vivekananda says you can't catch a whiff of them. You can't see a sight of them anywhere near. They're running for the comforts of life. They're ostriches. You know what I mean by that, I think. Tigers are all around, and they're sticking their heads in holes, thinking they're safe. So, a quick recap, you might say, on this teaching, so that we know that all the gunas take place in nature. They're prakriti, you see. They're not in the soul. The soul is ever pure, ever free, ever balanced, and so Shuddha, Buddha, Moksha, you see. So it's intelligent by nature, it's free by nature, it's pure by nature. Now back to our sword contest. Are we going to win it? Are we going to fence these three gunas away and transcend them, never make them our slaves, as it were, instead of the other way around? Well, we looked at pure sattva as we come down, and we saw that it's pure, it's used for liberation, it reflects the Atman, and it emanates emanates light. Now, when we say pure, I was thinking the Advaita has a teaching similar to that about purity. The word is shuddham in Vedanta. So he says in his beautiful stotram, Shuddham vishuddham avicharamanantam rupam nirlepa lepam avicharamananta rupam nishkanda kandam avicharamananta rupam Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Nishkanda kandam avicharam ananta rupam Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. As we sung in Portland at our ashram there a month ago or so, the Gyanamritam Stotram we call it, or the Jalisa, the verses of the Advaita. He says in this particular verse, by way of English translation that is, knowing the Supreme Brahman, one dares not place it in the context of what is divided and what's undivided, nor in the context of pure or polluted, shuddham, ashuddham, or vishuddham, nor place it in the context of having form or being formless. Effulgent like the sun, it is infinite and beyond even the intellect. Therefore I declare, you are pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky, infinite like space. That's a non-dual stotram you're listening to. It goes beyond deities, it goes beyond God with form. It even begins to transcend intellect and intelligence. See? So this is a very good illustration of why we look at it this way. Because you want to get, if you want to hear an example of another non-dual stotram, because this, this very supreme being that we call Shankara, who's giving us this teaching out of the Vivekachudamani, wrote a non-dual stotram called the Nirvana Shatkam about liberation. Mumukshutvam or mumuksham or moksha or mukti. Those are all words that mean close to the same thing from that word to be free, or to be naturally free. Never to even think of bondage. Not to even entertain the idea that the soul's bound. What to speak of a sinner or something low like that. So he would sing, for instance, Aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupo vibhutvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam Nacha sangatam naiva muktir nameyash chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham I have no form, I have no fancy. The all-pervading am I. Everywhere I exist, yet I am beyond the senses. Neither salvation am I, nor anything that can be known. I am pure consciousness and bliss. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. sounded a lot like the Avatut, right? I just declare that all of you are pure knowledge and pure bliss and pure wisdom and so forth, as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. So these are called non-dual stotrams in India, and they're rather rare. They come from the revealed scriptures of India. So this is what he's talking about. It's pure, it's used for liberation, it reflects the Atman and emanates light. Where would one get qualities like that? They would have to come out of sattva. And in that sattva you have spiritual practice. See? So you get spiritual practice from your teacher in the scriptures. You get the desire for it from the scriptures. You get the instructions on it from the guru. Let's look at sattva then. We're coming out from in, you see. And in this rendering of this chart, we're coming out of avyaktam, the undifferentiated, as a witness to avyaktam. All the seeds there are for us to take up or not, to water or not, compared to, depending upon what kind of lifetime we have to live, what our karmas are, what our samskaras are, or lack thereof, or neutralization thereof. If we're going to live a lifetime of practice to get free, if we're going to be an exemplar for others, and we're already free, or if we are going to struggle to neutralize karmas so that we can be free, all of that is predicated on the seeds back in avyaktam, or what you could correlate to, since avyaktam is gunas in nature, prakriti, back in your own deep sleep state, back in your own causal body. Thank God we have a word for it in English. Very hard to find one, because gross and subtle, subtle could actually apply to your deep sleep state, but we have to have something that distinguishes the subtle from the formless state, and that would be causal. It's the cause of the other two. And that's taught in the Vedanta and in yoga. It's probably a huge step for people to think that parents and nature didn't cause their body, that the mind did, their own mind did. I mean, you're going to have to make a shift like that to know that you're the producer of the bodies, and the bodies are consisting of the three gunas, and so you must have borrowed something from the three gunas, didn't you, as you came into manifestation, and you formulated your body. Hopefully you did this consciously, or at least in part consciously. You see different beings, and they're under the influence of the gunas, and that's why we started off with this, to show you how, in a very, you might say, well-differentiated teaching, that there are these three kinds of beings: depressed, or sleepy, restless, and balanced. You see them all the time. I think nowadays you're seeing less and less of the balanced ones. Maybe that's because they're hiding. They're hiding away from society and all its ills right now. But we need some of them to come out and help us, you see. Exemplify. Walk the walk, talk the talk, and so forth. Under sattva then, if we're coming out again from inward, if we're trying to find out, take a look at how people fall into mudya yonishi, deluded wombs, which is a very intriguing statement, both in Sanskrit and in English. You can be born in a deluded womb, have a bad father that treats you wrong, and parents that don't know anything about the Dharma, and lose all the advantages of spiritual life, what to speak of even a peaceful earthly life. It's happening all the time. You hear people complaining about it. So we're taking a look that way, sort of out the telescope of the third eye down to the other chakras. So what's under sattva? How did the person find the doorway to pure sattva? Adarpana must be there, absence of pride. Yama, beneficial denial. That was an expression I coined. because there's so much talk about denial today in psychological circles. And so I thought it would be much more elevating to think of a denial that's very good for you. Well, not just denials like you're in denial kind of thing, but you're in denial of your Atman, you see. You're in denial of the need to do practice so you can realize your Atman. What about those kinds of denials? And what about you should be in denial of Maya and ignorance in you. You should get thee behind me on all those things. So what about that kind of denial? So there's a beneficial denial out there that is not repression. And I've said this for many, many years, decades really, and I've had students and have students who are therapists and psychologists and so forth who are interested in the Vedanta, and I keep trying to impress upon them that besides having this sort of death grasp upon matter and atomic particles and the pleasures, sattva, that we can get out of them, there's another problem here, is we're not looking at our past lifetimes, rebirth and reincarnation, and not mastering it once we looked at it like the Tibetans did. Probably the best students of India are the Tibetans. And maybe the best exemplars of its non-dual side would be the Zen Buddhists. So that was the one beautiful thing about Buddhism, that it marched across the entire face of the world, physical world of matter, without raising a finger. What to speak of raising a sword or a cannon or a nuclear-tipped angel, as they say, shooting some missile at someone. So Buddhism, with all its nonviolence, expression right out of Mother India, having accomplished this great, probably one of the two greatest miracles in religious history. The other being accomplished by this man, Swami Vivekananda, who talked thousands of young men and some young women into giving up the world while he was in the body. Nobody's ever done that before. So some talk there about the benefit of yama. And what about niyama, spiritual practice? The yamas in yoga, of course, are these beneficial denials. What am I going to deny? Violence. What am I going to deny it in favor for? Non-violence. What am I going to deny? Coveting other people's goods, other nations' goods. What am I going to put in its place? Non-covetousness. What else? So you've got these yama, death, denial of everything. I'm not going to take on these things that people worship here. I'm going to worship the Supreme Being, who, by the way, exists in me as my own self. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. Svetashvatara Upanishad said that. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self, seated in your heart. It can't be any clearer, you see. Everything is right about that statement, and the direction is right about it, the perspective is right about it. All you then have to do is put it into niyama, practice it. How do you do that? Get outside the average run of things by doing some austerities. Put yourself into the press. Because what's the greatest sin? Weakness. Weakness is at the root of suffering, Vivekananda says. Why do they suffer? Because they're weak. If they were strong, they wouldn't suffer. They would transcend their suffering along with the three gunas and every other thing that came in the way of their vision. Single-eyed vision. Why let any of that exist when it's unreal? Ignorance is unreal. Then how can it cause you any real doubt? Ignorance is unreal. Then how can it cause you any real fear? You're taking an unreal thing and then fearing and doubting it, and that makes double unreal. You see, you're in double jeopardy then in Maya. So how are you going to get rid of doubt and fear if you don't realize that the original ignorance that caused them is also unreal, you see? And what are you going to do for that? Say, sing a non-dual stotram and believe it. It's one of the methods I used when the monks taught me this 30 years ago, 35 years ago in India. Oh, you want to know something that's not just a bhajan, that's not just kirtan, something that's not just to the Lord in form? Here, I'll give you a few of these stotrams. Meditate on those. Get yourself free. So, absence of pride, which really means humility, beneficial denial of things that are unreal, spiritual practice, which gets rid of your problems, is all a part of sattva, which is the revelatory power of Shakti. That's called Prakasha. And that's why next I wanted to go to the chart on Prakasha Shakti, basically. That is intelligence. But let's finish that up. What else is there? Sense control, pratyahar. People cannot get concentration because they can't take their mind off of objects with the senses. The senses-object connection is keeping them from getting self-control. If they could master the objects both outside and inside, they'd immediately concentrate. So if you're born and they start you into the eternal money-making, you don't have a chance to realize your past lifetime. They throw you into the world of commerce right away. There's no way that you're going to realize the non-objective Brahman when they're focusing your mind upon objects. That is, infernal objects. You need the eternal subject, not the infernal object. So that's going to take some faith, shraddha, bhakti, devotion. We talked about that earlier. And there's that word, mumukshutvam, coming out of moksha and mukti, the desire for liberation. That's kind of a rare thing, desire to be free. And daiva, you have to realize your own divine nature. Those are all sattvic things that Shankara mentions in the Vivekachudamani that make up, according to him, that guna of sattva, why it can be a revelatory power. And you need to then take it beyond just an equal abidance in a kind of pleasurable, doubt-free, fear-free kind of atmosphere, and use it as a doorway to get to non-dual reality. Because where there's content, there's malcontent. Where there's peace, there's lack of peace. Where there's non-violence, there's violence. If you're still aware of a duality or an opposite, it's always threatening to encroach itself upon your mind. So you need to get to a non-dual state, beyond the three gunas. More specifically, beyond dvandva, mohena. Dvandva, dualities which mohena delude you. Moha, delude you, see. Let's look at, falling from the yellow mood, mixed sattva, let's look at the power of projection, or rajas. That's called dikshepa shakti. And you might recognize some of these words. Ragadvesha, that's the source of desire. Ragadavo, constant attachment. These are all things that are the ground of restlessness. These are what cause you restlessness. You're constantly attached to something. Like yesterday, speaking on the phone to a woman who had a child. I met her in prison, and I was giving a talk in prison. She got out of prison, had a child, and now the boyfriend is, husband so to speak, taken the child away, and the courts are deliberating who gets to keep it, you see. So a kind of common run of what happens to people in the rajasic cycles of things. And, you know, the vindictiveness that breeds, the anger that comes about from it, the helplessness, the torment, all of these things, a very unhealthy mix in the mind of people. I'd even say in the brains of people. So I was speaking to her and asking her to get detachment from it. Oh, you don't have the child for 30 days? Great. Do something for yourself. Let the courts deliberate. How can you rush that process? You see, don't brood on it. Detach. get some peace, because when your child comes back to you, and he probably will, then you'll be in a peaceful state of mind. Isn't that much better than receiving him in a tamasic or rajasic state of mind? So you need, and I told her then about the three gunas, not using these words, but telling her how, I told her, just look back a year ago, wasn't everything better? Yeah. So now it's not. If you look through your life, you'll see that it goes from better to worse, back to better and worse, to mixed and so forth. That's the changing of the three gunas, and it's happening all the time to everyone. Now, how are you going to deal with them? You see, are you going to have pride? Are you going to not deny the things that are causing you suffering? Are you not going to practice to get rid of them and so forth? Are you going to refuse sattva when sattva is there to heal you and help you? So, reasoning with people, you see, caught in these predicaments, in these conundrums that can flavor the mind in very unhealthy ways and cause some scars and karmas to linger. You see, we call it residual content. You see, it's a residue that's left in the mind that's in accord with that memory we were singing about. Some people remember the Lord. Some people remember spiritual practice. Some people remember all the negative things that happened to them. So Holy Mother used to say, if a man does one good thing for you and 1,000 bad things towards you, you should remember that one good thing. Because it harms you. It doesn't harm the other person when you're hating them. It harms you. So you remember that one good thing. She says, I always try and remember that one good thing that person was known for, or did to me, or did to others. And the others, go by the wayside. Water down under the bridge and down the river. So you might call that practicing the art of forgiveness and so forth. But it's one of these practices you'll get into. So you don't want to be under the press of raga devesha, attachment and aversion, And you don't want constant attachment either, except maybe to the Lord. So how about manasa? What does it say there? Yeah. Manasa vikaraha. That is, you want this freedom from mental disturbance. The cause, kara, of mental disturbance in the mind. You want to get to the root of that. And then dukkadayo, sorrow and pain. Can it be overcome? Most people say no. And even the teachings in spirituality say it's very hard to get rid of those. But the yogis say, no, I got over it. Sorrow and pain didn't come to me anymore. And I found that would be true if I practiced transcending the three gunas. All of a sudden, where did sorrow and pain go when I was in a sattvic mood? And it only came dancing back when I went into restlessness and darkness. But when I went back into sattva, I wasn't feeling it, you see. Then how real can it be? And how impeding can it be? Let's move on so we get this done. Today's, or this second class on reincarnation and rebirth, settling in on how close connection between rebirth and reincarnation is with the gunas. Because usually I'd be teaching from the charts of Holy Mother on the and Tibetan Buddhism on the dynamics of rebirth, the actual dynamics that are going on. But this is the philosophical underpinnings of the sources or the causes of people falling into these things. Power of projection is next, Vikshepa Shakti. Now Shankara is very, I don't know if he was the original coordinator or connector of taking tamas and connecting it with avarana Shakti, and taking rajas and connecting it with Vikshepa Shakti, and taking sattva and connecting it with Prakasha Shakti, but he did it right there in the Vivekachudamani. So there's a kind of Shakti or power that accompanies each one of these things. Of course, we would want we would at least want the revelatory power, but it would be better then from revelatory power to go to she herself. she who runs the show. We want to go to her and be her son or daughter. Align ourselves with her feet of bliss. Shall I sing? Align ourselves with the Divine Mother in that unique way. And maybe even write a song to her, if you could. Niranjani Jyoti Shri Jagat Janini Shri Para Prakriti Mahaprakriti Chandika Devi Ambika Devi Triguna Tita Devi Om Tarini Bhavani Devi Mahashakti Devi Devi Jagadatri Bhuvaneshwari Brahma Vidya Devi Kali Durga Devi Saraswati Vakdevi Ad Shakti Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam Shri Devi Padam. We align ourselves with the divine feet of the Mother of the Universe, Shri Devi Padam, her feet. Because if we do, then we'll realize she's Niranjani Jyoti, she's the light of purity. She is Shri Jagat-Janini, she's the mother of all beings and of all worlds. She is Shri Paraprakriti Mahaprakriti. She controls Prakriti and the gunas. And she's also Trigunatita Devi. Well, there it is right there. She's the mother of the three gunas. She's the master of the three gunas. You know who else they call master of the three gunas is Sri Ramakrishna. You'll hear that sung in the hymn every time. Om Hring Ritang Tamachalo Gunajit Guneja Gunajit Guneja, the master of the three gunas. So one thinks about these beautiful slokas and verses when one talks the philosophy. That's how Bhakti and Jnanam are together in it. Should be together in it. When I started teaching from the platform of Dharma, and I had been doing so from the platform of music for 10 or 15 years prior to that, and I started leaving the music out, then like Sixin, before he passed away, our founder said, don't leave the music out, Babaji. Don't just talk philosophy. Make sure you put the music in there. That's really going to help people. It's adding that bhakti element into the philosophy, which is very abstruse and high quite often, and lots of flows of words. And I'm going to have people that really value words and the meaning of words. And because one of the verses in here says she's Vakdevi. She's the meaning in the word. She's in the letter. Not just in the word, she's in the letters. And she's the particles in the letters. See? Just like there are particles in objects, like atoms. There are particles of intelligence of her in these alphabets. And that's called meaning. So she's the meaning in all the mantras. She's the secret of all the teachings in the slokas. She's the perfect I consciousness existing in all things. And her very essence is non-dual reality. She's the essence of non-dual reality. These are slokas out of the tantras. So these are knowers of Divine Mother reality. Very important in this day and age because she's always veiled. Throughout all the ages and all the religions, she's always veiled. In India, they kept some semblance of remembrance about her because there's actually 2 mother scriptures in India that are prominent. Shankara's teacher's teacher also did a commentary on, wrote a scripture on Divine Mother. So you'll have to look deep, sometimes long, and far afield maybe from most other darshanas to find these special teachings on her. And when you do find them, you'll find somebody who's an exponent of explaining them to you in terms of Vakdevi. She's the meaning in the words. And it goes much deeper than that. And sometimes we say, as Westerners, we get the meaning of the words for our intellect. But the meaning of the words for spirituality is a different track. It's a deeper route to go. And it awakens you to revelatory power, for instance. You know, one person can read the scriptures, so it's nice. One person can read the scriptures, I want to know more, you know. I want to go deeper. What's that word mean? You know, what's the word guna mean? Oh, well, there are 3 of them, and let's go on, you know, give some teachings on it. See? So you'll come to know it and be free of it. So Vikshepa Shakti is the power of projection. That's the restless power, you see. So that's a power, a Shakti power that's in everything. It is the animating power, maybe devoid or stripped of the purity of sattva. See, it hasn't. If you put the purity of sattva back in it, revelatory power, then this action would have some meaning. So isn't it very key to your life that I'm always running myself ragged and spinning the wheels? Sometimes I feel that at the end of my day or week or month or year. Hopefully not what you end up with in a lifetime. You want to extract something better than that. But since that's always, that kind of running ragged tendency is always there, then you want to flavor it with more sattva. You see, bring more of a higher guna into it, a higher quality, because probably the best word that they use in English for guna is quality. Attribute, or sometimes mood, or mode. You see, it flavors your moods of your mind, and it's a kind of mode in which everything operates. So those are words, 4 words I just said about the gunas that, you know, give you a little bit different flavor of what a guna is in a definition in your own language, you see. So you'll have to entertain these, you know, and see it from all sides. And then you'll be more of a knower of what the guna is, then you can get on top of it. Otherwise, it can trick you. You know, you get a sword stab from it one day, maybe from the back. Oh, Thomas, you're really cruel. Ouch! Maybe in the ass, you know, just as a joke. You see, that's what Maya seems to be always doing. So the power of projection, Rajas, is Vikshepa Shakti. What is that? You see, you can see that. We went through the power of revelation, is faith, devotion, desire, divine nature. Now, the power of Rajas we went through to source of desire, constant attachment, mental disturbances, and, of course, sorrow and pain. Now, let's look at the power, to move on fairly quickly, of tamas. Ouch. I would have usually colored it black, but since this image had so much black, we couldn't see the words. So I put it in a new form of white. You see. So there's the power of obscuration. If you want it in English, tamas veils entirely. Rajas distorts, makes something look other than what it is. You can see how that's really a stumbling block. People are taking the real for the unreal and so forth. But sattva reveals, see, revelatory power. But Shankara is saying there's a higher sattva that can take place in a more refined person who's got the what? Net of sadhana guarding from the 3 gunas. It's like having the best fencer, you just can't get through his guard. So that power of sattva is attending, and he's worry-free, stress-free, confident, and fully aware of what's going on as he works his way through life. So tamas is invested with what? Illusory appearance. there's a cold splash of water in the face of most people. Oh, what is this Maya? It's covering power. Like green scum covers the lake so you can't see your face anymore. You have to wait for another season. Oh, the green scum isn't there anymore. Look what I look like, you see. And now I'm getting very arrogant about how I look. There's all sorts of traps on all sides, but in tamas particularly. But illusory appearances are there everywhere. Like Dalai Lama's teaching, there's the illusion tree, is what you're looking at every day, the illusion forest. What is the real tree? Swirling particles. Science proved that to you. But there's a Buddha nature tree out there too. There's the treeness of the tree. Vivekananda used to say that. He says, well, I'm not rich, I don't have any money, I can't give you gold and silver, but I can give you the meaning of the goldness of gold. I can give you the meaning of the silverness of silver. I can give you the meaning of the manliness of man and the womanliness of woman. So he can give you the essence of all these things which people are attaching to. See, isn't that what Rajas is all about? These things they're attaching to. It has a cause in false appearance. That's why Vivarta is such a powerful word. You probably would think, you hear the word Vivarta in Vedanta and think, oh, that's revelatory teaching. No. That's total covering teaching. It's pointing you to tamas as being you, the victim of, you see. It's because of illusion. It's because of ignorance. So, and bondage is there, you see. If you'd never had bondage, you wouldn't have fallen into the misfiance or the misconception that you were ever bound by appearances and so forth. This is also how Maya takes things and switches them to look other than what they are. So Rajas and tamas get together into a nice little tete-a-tete, you see. Isn't that what they call it in fencing? And you're being hypnotized with it and forgetting and letting your guard down, you see, getting stabs of pain in cycles. One might be deeper than another. You see, one might be a scratch and you can, oh, that's sure, glad I lived through that. The other could be like a death blow or losing a loved one or something. You see, these things are happening all the time. Recently I heard someone say, yeah, I haven't seen you for a while. Why haven't you seen me? Well, because of a birth in the family and my father died. See, you hear that all the time from people. They're coming and they're going in droves. And you're accepting this? It's because of Vivarta you're separating this. It's an illusory appearance of coming and going. The Atman never moves. It's stationary. It witnesses the coming and going of other things. Therefore, why don't you become like that? See? If you want to know how God sees, if you want to know God, then you should see how God sees. Meister Eckhart said, great Christian mystic. If you want to know God, then see how God sees. Open this eye and see. Oh, I see it's a witness. It's never involved. The three gunas don't apply to it. They apply to what? Nature. Everything happens in nature. So you're the witness of nature. You're also the producer of nature with your mind. These things, you got to get some beneficial denial around. See, alasya is there, or agyanam, dullness of ignorance is there in tamas, and abhavana, false thinking, is there. That's the power of obscuration. If you were to go to the lake and it's all covered with green scum, you can't see anything. You can't see yourself. You go later and it's just partially covered with green scum, or there's a wind blowing it and you see a distortion of yourself. And when you look in it, then that's rajas. And when you go to the lake and it's all clear, you see that, you can see yourself, that's sattva again. And then you go beyond all of the three gunas and get into the state of I am that, or that thou art. Tattvamasi they call it. So there are no quotes on this chart. It's self-explanatory, and it's a good rendering of the three gunas. So that's why I'd like to put side by side Krishna's rendering of the three gunas and Shankara's rendering of the three gunas thousands of years later. You can see there's not a lot of change there. There's nothing but concurrence, agreement, and one is given more from the standpoint of groups of souls and how they incarnate. The other is given from the standpoint of an individual and how he gets free. Because if the individual gets free, the collective can get free. That's called Jivan Mukta. So it's up to us to be free and teach our children how to be free. Swamiji said, I want everyone to be free. Don't follow me. See, I want everyone to be free as the air they breathe. He said, I'm no master to any sannyasin. I want them all to be free. So you couldn't pin the mantle of guide and guru on Sri Ramakrishna or Swamiji. They were exemplars. You got to go to your guru if you want to know someone to follow, and that guru is going to have to be authentic, because these others are the exemplars that the guru is looking at when he teaches you the Dharma, which then diffuses the ignorance which allows you to free yourself. You can't get freedom from bowing at the guru's feet. You can't get freedom from studying the eight-limbed yoga. You can't get free by calming the mind's vibrations in meditation. Why is that? Because you're already free. Freedom is not predicated on any sadhana. Sadhana will be a protective net, but you have coming to the realization that you're always free, always have been free, and never have been anything else but free. And you've dreamed ignorance over yourself. Again, what's it called? Vivarta. Again, what's it called? Again, what's it called?
Vivarta.
Again, what's it called?
Vivarta.
Vivarta. False superimposition of the unreal over the real. It's all a sleight of hand. It doesn't change Brahman in the least. It doesn't change the lake when the scum comes. So, all of these are non-dual realizations, or qualified non-dual realizations that lead you through the doorway, which is this teaching of Shankara is so valuable. There we are coming towards an end, and at not the best time either to take up a whole new chart. But we can make an introduction right now to next week's class by showing both of these. So I'm using couplets of charts here together. So that just like we saw Shiva and Shiva and Krishna, or Shankara and Krishna's teachings, side by side, many millennia apart, and with certain distinguishing marks of each. We can also say the same about how beings like Lord Vashishta talked about this revelatory power, maybe even the power of Shakti herself, Mahashakti, in terms of pratibha. Sri Ramakrishna liked it so much that in the Gospel you'll find him talking about pratibha. Oh, don't you know there's a flint-like intelligence in being? Oh, Nara and others would ask him, what do you mean flint-like? I said, well, if you put a match or fire stick or something in the river, you take it out and try and strike, and it won't strike sparks. It's all damp and wet. But if you put a flint in the river for 1,000 years, you can take it out, even when it's still damp, strike it, sparks will fly, you see. So pratibha is intelligence with a capital I. It's something that much akin to the Atman. In fact, Vivekananda would say the first thing out the gate, along with the gunas, you might say the gunas would be the first insentient thing out the gate. The first sentient thing out the gate would be your intelligence. flint-like intelligence, pratibha. It's never going to forget. And some beings keep it that way. You see, some people, you might say, come to Earth with matches and think that they can start a light here that'll keep them free. That's not going to happen. So, there was a teaching by Sri Ramakrishna that said if you keep garlic in a cup, garlic solution in a cup, and then, you wash the cup, still smells like garlic, you see. So, what's the solution? What are you talking about? The devotees would say. Talking about your mind and ego. You keep the garlic of the world in there. Even if you wash it 1,000 times, you still stink like the world. Then what's the solution? Submit the garlic cup to fire. Burn, cook it over the fire. And then that smell will go away. So that's very similar to what we're talking about here with flint-like intelligence. Some people come to the world with matchsticks and think that they can keep everything free, but the match gets dipped in water even for a minute, and it can't strike sparks. So the devotees would say, well, then we're hopeless, we're helpless. No, the match still has sulfur in it, says. Just dry it out in the sun, and it'll strike sparks later, you see. So they were about ready to give up everything because of the wetness of the water of worldliness had gotten into them, and the great master was sitting there telling them, as it were, you can't strike sparks. You can't get the light. Whereas others have a flint in them, pratibha, and they can get light any time they want. They've got it inside of themselves. They're svayam jyoti. Svayam means internal essence, and jyoti means light. So they have this eternal light within them all the time. They can take it out and show it to you, light up things for you. And that's what they've decided. They'll keep that, you see. Matches and candles and, articles of fire that are inferior, they're not interested in those anymore. They've got the light of the worlds. Who said that? He came out of the wilderness, he said, I am the light of the worlds. He had seen what we would call the Atman, the Spirit, that is, Jesus, from his 12 days and 12 nights in the wilderness. I am the light of the worlds. So that's this flint-like intelligence that he just stripped away a few coverings, vivarta, in order to see it again. And he did that for all his disciples and for the collective humanity at the time. And it had an effect on thousands and thousands, millions of people over time. So you could say then this is a valuable teaching in India that is again rather particular to is this idea that intelligence is the first compound of consciousness. I'm quoting Vivekananda. It's the first compound of consciousness. The compound is an admixture, right? So consciousness is pure. The first thing that happens is intelligence. And intelligence will then formulate all of these worlds. You want to keep that with you. Like one person was coming to class, but they forgot their gas card, So they didn't have pratibha with them, you see. They couldn't ignite their gas tank and make the trip. So next week they remembered their pratibha, you see, their gas card, and they could get here, you see. So you want to make sure that you don't leave home without it, as they say. This pratibha is very, and this is an introduction to this chart. In 5 minutes left, let me give you an introduction to this chart, because then we can go into more depth on them next week, which is our final class on this subject, which is also Janmashtami. Actually, next Saturday is Krishna's birthday. That's why so much Krishna teaching and songs have been going on here this week, and next week will continue. That great archetypical soul inspires us, and the teachings in the Gita hold us in very good stead. As far as this teaching, you've seen it quite often. It's around the word sankalpa. Again, these words in India with their letters and with their particles of Shakti in them are very revelatory. They're what you do when you come to the scriptures. You're going to have a keen interest in what those words are saying and what they mean on a deeper than just intellectual frame of reference. It has to go deeper. Because we're talking about intelligence, but the intellect is something different. Sometimes we say there's a distinction between the mind and the brain in Vedanta. Well, you could make a certain distinction again between intelligence and intellect. Intellect holds intelligence. So it's a holder, you see, it's a vehicle. But the intelligence itself is the thing, you see. So that's the difference between pratibha and the buddhi. You see, the holder of intelligence and intelligence itself. Intelligence is spontaneous and free, and always will be that way. First compound again. An easy way to get back into Brahman with your intelligence, you see. Intellect can become a little limited, can't it? It can be like that garlic cup holding a solution that doesn't smell so good. It's got ego-tainted knowledge in it. See, this is my knowledge. But the person with pratibha is saying, that's mother's knowledge. And I follow it. See, I'll keep it in its purest element and won't let it become polluted. Isn't that the difference up here we were looking at? The difference between pure and the polluted in the higher gunas. So the word sankalpa, or vikalpa if you like, is all about mental projection. So there's a great process that's going on with billions of minds here, 7. What is it now, over 7? I don't keep up on it. People are coming and going all the time, as we're saying, so it's hard to keep a number down. Who can do it? It's enough to stand back and watch the process and know that it's all vivarta, a false superimposition over the changeless, birthless, deathless soul that you are, that everyone is. That's the good news in Vedanta. There's really one soul here, not many souls. And it's like the teaching about Krishna. He's the male, all other souls are females. They give that teaching out. We sang that just now, Gopa Gopi, you see, is that one great soul, archetypical soul, and all the gopas and gopis are like women that are dancing around him. So sankalpa, vikalpa then is a mental projection going on. We would probably attribute it to the Trinity, if we want to blame someone. But their projection is very beautiful. This is beyond heaven. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity, is beyond heaven, earth, and hell cycles, because those are the 3 lower chakras. But the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the third eye chakra, and of course the non-chakra, if you want to call it, the 1,000-petaled lotus called Sahasrara, these are all higher, deeper realms. And so the sankalpa there is very, very delicate, very sensitive, very beautiful, and very sattvic. So sankalpa then, and sattva, and rajas and tamas, of course, the lower projections of mind, are very connected. These are the kind of words you have to study them separately, then you've got to put them together so that the dynamics of the whole thing become revealed to you. What's that called again? Prakasha Shakti. You want revelation out of all this. You don't want obscuration, certainly, and you don't want distortion. So it's a classic teaching that goes back to the 3 gunas. If you're clear about them, like he said back to the very beginning of our chart, you're not born at the time of creation, nor are you disturbed at the time of dissolution. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya Abira Mayedi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness, tamas, to light, sattva. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal, vivarta, to the real, Brahman. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.